My beloved child, there is a door you knocked on, and it did not open. There is a prayer you whispered into the dark, and the silence that followed felt like an answer of its own. You called it no. You have carried that word for a long time now, quietly, without telling anyone how heavy it has become. I want to sit with you in this moment before I say anything else. I saw the night you stopped asking. I saw you fold that dream and put it away, the way you fold a coat you no longer expect to wear. You told yourself you were being realistic. You told yourself you were protecting your own heart. But I never said no. I was preparing the room. You have wondered, more than once, if I forgot the request, if it slipped past me the way things slip past people who are busy, distracted, occupied with larger matters. As if you were small to me, as if your need was a minor thing on a very long list. That is not who I am. I do not forget. I do not lose track. I do not set your prayer aside to attend to something more important, because there is nothing more important to me than you. What you experienced as silence was never absence. It was construction. There were things that needed to be true about the timing, about the people involved, about you, before the answer could arrive in a form that would actually hold what you needed it to hold. A gift given too early can crush the hands that receive it. I was not withholding. I was building the hands first. Think for a moment about a woman named Hannah. She wanted a child. Not casually, not the way people want things they could easily live without. She wanted this the way you want the thing you have stopped saying out loud. Year after year, she went to the place of worship and she wept. Her rival mocked her for what she lacked. Her husband loved her, but even his love could not fill the specific ache she carried. She prayed with such intensity that a man watching her thought she was drunk on wine. That is how deep it went. Her lips moved, but no sound came out, grief too large for words. And for years, heaven seemed to have nothing to say back. But Scripture tells us that in time, the Lord remembered her, not because he had forgotten and suddenly recalled her file. The word means something closer to this. The moment had arrived that he had already been preparing. Her son was born, and she named him Samuel. God hears. She did not keep him for herself. She gave him back, and that child grew to become one of the most important voices Israel ever had, a man who anointed kings. The years of silence were not empty. They were the shaping of a woman who could release what she had prayed for, and a child who would come into the world at exactly the moment his calling required. If Hannah's answer had come the first year she asked, it would still have been a gift. But it would not have been Samuel, not the one whose life would matter to a whole nation for generations. Some prayers are not delayed because you are being punished. They are delayed because what you are asking for is bigger than you currently understand. I know this does not erase the waiting. I am not telling you this so that you will feel foolish for grieving what has not yet come. Grief and faith are allowed to sit in the same room. You do not have to pretend the ache isn't real in order to trust that I am near. What if the waiting itself has been doing something in you that the answer alone never could have done? You have grown more honest in this season. You have learned who stays and who disappears when things get quiet. You have discovered a kind of prayer that isn't performance. The kind that happens at 2 a.m. when no one is watching, when it's just you and me and the truth of how tired you are. That version of you was not available 3 years ago. I am not asking you to thank me for the pain. I am asking you to notice that you are not standing still while you waited. Something was happening beneath the surface, the way roots grow in the dark before anything green appears above the ground. There is another story I want to place in front of you. A Roman centurion, a man used to giving orders and having them obeyed instantly. came to Jesus because his servant was dying. He did not ask for a slow process. He did not ask for a sign to consider later. He wanted the healing now, the way you want your answer now. But notice what he said. He told Jesus there was no need to even come to the house. Only say the word. He understood something about authority that most people around him missed, that the timing and the method belonged to the one with the power to give the gift, not to the one asking for it. And Jesus, moved by this man's trust rather than his urgency, said the healing would happen. It happened at that very hour. But notice, it happened on Jesus' terms, in Jesus' way, not exactly as the centurion had first imagined it when he set out that morning expecting Jesus to walk to his house. Sometimes the answer arrives differently than you pictured it. Sometimes it does not look like the door reopening exactly the way it closed. It looks like a new door, one you were not watching because you were still staring at the old one. I am not asking you to stop hoping for what you asked for. I am asking you to hold your hands open enough that you would recognize the answer even if it did not arrive wearing the shape you expected. Here is a truth I want you to carry gently, not as a weapon against your own pain, but as a light for the path ahead. Delay is not denial. A closed door is not always a rejection. Sometimes it is a redirection. Sometimes it is protection from a season you were not yet ready to walk through, or from people who were not yet ready to walk through it with you. I know it is hard to trust a process you cannot see the mechanics of. You want blueprints. I am asking for trust instead. Not blind trust, but the kind that comes from remembering every other time I was faithful, even when it did not look like it in the moment. Think back. Was there ever a season where you were certain I had abandoned the plan, and later, sometimes years later, you understood why it happened exactly when it did? I have not changed. The God who was faithful then is the God holding your today. There is a wedding I want to tell you about, one that happened in a small town called Cana. The wine ran out. In that culture, that was not a small embarrassment. It could shame a family for a generation. Mary noticed the problem before anyone else did, and she brought it to her son. His first response was not immediate agreement. He said his hour had not yet come. But Mary did something remarkable. She did not argue with him. She did not demand he act sooner than he intended. She simply turned to the servants and said, "Do whatever he tells you." And then, in what looks to us like the same moment, though we don't know how much time actually passed, the water became wine. Not ordinary wine, the best they had tasted all night, saved, as the master of the feast put it, for last. The best was saved for last, not the first cup, not the easy answer at the beginning of the evening when everyone was still gathered and comfortable. The best came after the shortage, after the embarrassment, after the moment when it looked like the celebration might end in disappointment. What if what you were waiting for is being saved, not withheld? What if the timing you are frustrated by is actually protecting the quality of what is coming? I want to be honest with you about something. I am not going to tell you a date. I am not going to promise you that everything changes next week, or next month, or even this year. Anyone who tells you they know the exact hour of your breakthrough is telling you something I have not told them. What I will tell you is this: I am not absent from the waiting room. I am not pacing outside it, wondering when I'll get around to you. I am in the room with you. I have been in the room with you the entire time, in the tears you didn't post anywhere, in the mornings you almost didn't get up, in the moments you kept showing up to your life even though your heart wasn't in it yet. That showing up mattered more than you know. Faithfulness in a hidden season is not wasted. It is being written into the story you will one day tell someone else who is sitting exactly where you are sitting now. Let me ask you something, gently. What if this waiting is not a punishment, but preparation for a yes your current capacity could not have carried? There is a kind of trust that only forms when the outcome is genuinely uncertain, not guaranteed. If I gave you everything the moment you asked, you would never discover that I am enough, even in the space before the answer. That discovery is worth something, maybe worth more than the thing you originally prayed for. I am not saying the ache doesn't matter. I am saying the ache is not the end of the story. It is the middle of it, the part that feels endless while you're inside it, but that you will look back on one day and recognize as the chapter where everything was quietly being arranged. I think of a blind man named Bartimaeus, sitting by the road, listening to a crowd pass by. He had heard about Jesus before. He had probably hoped before and been disappointed before. But when he heard Jesus was near, he did not stay quiet and polite about it. He cried out, loudly, even when people around him told him to be silent. He kept crying out anyway, and Jesus stopped. Not everyone in that crowd got what they wanted that day. But the one who refused to go silent, who kept asking even when it was uncomfortable and others wanted him to stop, Jesus called him forward. I am not asking you to be loud for the sake of performance. I am asking you not to go silent just because the answer is taking longer than you expected. Keep bringing me your honest heart. Keep asking. Not because I need convincing, but because the asking keeps you close to me. And closeness is where the real transformation happens, long before the visible answer ever arrives. Here is what I want you to know as you carry this forward. You did not misread your life. The dream you had was not foolish. The prayer you prayed was not too much to ask. What felt like silence was never rejection. It was the sound of something being built that was not yet ready to be seen. I have not forgotten your name. I have not lost track of the years. I have not confused your story with someone else's timeline. The right time is not a vague promise meant to comfort you into patience. It is a real moment, already being prepared, shaped by things you cannot see yet, people who are not ready, circumstances that have not aligned, a version of you that is still becoming who you need to be to carry what is coming. So tonight, if you are tired of waiting, let yourself rest instead of striving. You do not have to force the door open. You do not have to manufacture the answer through sheer exhaustion and effort. You are allowed to lay this down for a while and trust that I am not sleeping on it. I saw every tear. I saw every night you almost gave up. I saw the quiet faith you kept practicing even when no one applauded it. None of it was wasted. None of it was missed. You thought I said no. I was preparing the room. I was preparing the people. I was preparing you. And when the time comes, not before, not late, but exactly when it is ready, you will understand why it could not have come any sooner. Until then, I am here. Not far off, not distracted, not withholding out of indifference, just preparing, just with you. My beloved child, rest now. The right time is already on its way. But let me stay with you a little longer, because I know one comforting word is rarely enough to undo years of wondering. There is a fear underneath the waiting that you have not said out loud, not even to yourself in the quiet. It sounds something like this. What if the delay means I did something wrong? What if I missed my chance and this silence is the cost of a mistake I can't even identify? I want to answer that fear directly because it has followed you longer than you realize. You did not disqualify yourself. You did not say the wrong prayer, or not pray hard enough, or fail some invisible test that locked the door behind you. That is not how I work. I am not counting your mistakes and rationing my goodness accordingly. If that were true, no one would ever receive anything from me, because everyone fails at something. The delay is not a verdict on your worthiness. It never was. Think about Ruth for a moment. a woman who lost almost everything before her story turned toward hope. She was a widow in a foreign land, with no husband, no children, no status, and no obvious future. She had every reason to return to her own people and try to rebuild a quieter, safer life. Instead, she chose to stay with her mother-in-law Naomi, gleaning leftover grain in someone else's field, just to survive. There was no sign, in that season, that anything good was coming. She was simply doing the next right thing, day after day, in a field that was not even hers. She did not know that the field belonged to a man named Boaz, a close relative with the right and the means to redeem her family's future. She did not know that her faithfulness in obscurity was about to intersect with a plan that had been quietly forming long before she ever picked up a single stalk of grain. Ruth's breakthrough did not come because she finally figured out the right strategy. It came because she kept showing up honestly in the ordinary work in front of her, while I was arranging what she could not yet see. Your ordinary faithfulness right now, the parts of your life that feel unremarkable, unnoticed, unrewarded, is not disconnected from what is coming. It is part of how the field gets prepared. I know some days the waiting doesn't feel like a field being prepared. It feels like a wilderness, flat, repetitive, the same disappointment on a loop. Let me tell you something about wildernesses. They are never wasted in my hands. A wilderness season is not a punishment for wandering off course. Sometimes it is simply the terrain between where you were and where you're going. It is uncomfortable. It is slow. There is very little scenery to distract you from your own thoughts. But it is also where you learn what actually sustains you, apart from the comfort you thought you needed. It is where noise falls away, and you hear things more clearly than you ever did in the middle of a full and busy life. If you feel like you're in a wilderness right now, I am not absent from it. I am not watching from a distance, waiting to see if you make it through on your own. I go through wildernesses with my children. I always have. Here is a question I want to leave with you, not to unsettle you, but to loosen something that has been gripped too tightly for too long. What if the timing you're frustrated with is actually mercy? What if the door that stayed closed protected you from a version of the answer that would have cost you more than you were prepared to pay? A relationship that wasn't ready, a position you weren't yet equipped to hold, a blessing that would have arrived without the foundation strong enough to support it. You cannot see the alternate paths you didn't walk. I can. I am not asking you to assume every closed door was secretly a rescue. Some closed doors are simply closed for now, and will open later exactly as you hoped. But I am asking you to consider that the God who loves you enough to say yes to you eventually is the same God who loves you enough to say, not yet, when not yet is the more loving answer. Love sometimes wears the face of delay. I also want to speak to the exhaustion in you, the specific tiredness that comes not from one hard day, but from holding hope for a long time without seeing it land. That kind of tired is real. It is not weakness. It is not a sign that your faith has failed. Even the strongest among those who walked closely with me grew weary in the waiting. Elijah, after one of his greatest victories, collapsed under a tree and asked to die, not because his faith was gone, but because he was human, and humans run out of strength. I did not scold him for his exhaustion. I sent an angel to feed him. Twice, I let him sleep. Only after his body was cared for did I speak to him again, gently, in a whisper rather than a shout. If you need rest before you need another word of encouragement, take the rest. I am not disappointed in you for being tired. I made you, and I know exactly how much a person can carry before they need to set something down for a while. There will be a moment, I cannot tell you when, because that is not mine to reveal in advance, when you will look back at this season and finally understand the shape of it. You will see how the timing protected you. You will see how the waiting matured something in you that the immediate answer never could have reached. You will see the people who needed to arrive first, the doors that needed to close so the right one could open without competition, the version of you that needed to grow before the blessing arrived so you could actually hold on to it once it came. None of that understanding is available to you yet. That is part of what makes this season hard. Faith almost always operates without the full picture. You are being asked to trust the author while you can only read the page you're currently on. But I have written every page before this one, and I am not abandoning the story now. So hold on, not with clenched fists, but with open hands. Keep living, keep working, keep loving the people in front of you. Keep showing up to your ordinary days with the quiet dignity of someone who knows they have not been forgotten, even when the evidence is still hidden. I was not silent when I seemed silent. I was not absent when I seemed far. I was not saying no when it felt like no. I was preparing the room, preparing the people, preparing you, and I am preparing still, even in the exact moment you are hearing these words. The right time has not vanished. It has not been cancelled. It is not lost somewhere. I cannot find it. It is coming. And when it arrives, you will not need me to convince you it was worth the wait. You will simply know. Rest now, my beloved child. I am not finished with your story.